When first discovered in 1794, a glacier 65 miles long, 2 miles wide, and 4,000 feet thick covered all of Glacier Bay. As the glacier retreated over 2 centuries, it separated into the distinct glaciers of today. The day began very dark and foggy as we sailed into Glacier Bay. Sailing by Russell Island, we passed another cruise ship and small tour boats sailing on the glassy emerald water of the Tar Inlet. We caught glimpses of alpine glaciers and snow-covered mountains as we sailed up the Tar Inlet. As we sailed deeper into Glacier Bay, the weather began to lift and the fog retreated into the mountains. Finally, we got our first view of the Grand Pacific Glacier. The Grand Pacific Glacier has an average height of 150 feet, extending 35 miles from Canada to the Tar Inlet in Alaska. It's joined by its tributary, the Ferris Glacier, on the west side near its terminus. The moraine makes the terminus look like a barren, rocky shoreline, but it's a tidewater glacier calving into the head of the Tar Inlet. The Grand Pacific is the remnant of the large glacier discovered by Captain Vancouver. Until 1992, the Grand Pacific and Margerie glaciers were merged, but today the Grand Pacific has receded, separating the two by over a mile. We take one final look at this mammoth before heading on to Margerie Glacier. We cruise slowly to the Margerie Glacier. It's named after Emmanuel de Margerie, a French geographer and geologist who visited Glacier Bay in 1913. The main fork of the Margerie Glacier begins on the southern slopes of Mount Root in the Fairweather mountain range. It flows 21 miles from the snowfields near the Canada-Alaska border to its terminus in the Tar Inlet. It has a width of 1 mile and a height of 350 feet, with 100 feet of the terminus below water level. The Margerie Glacier is a hanging glacier. Parts of it protrude over the floor of the Tar Inlet, resulting in many calving events that have a rifle-like crack and a booming roar, followed by a boiling-like turbulence as the ice falls into the water. We did not see a calving event, but we did hear sharp cracking noises as the river of ice was being pushed towards the inlet. We saw its many shapes and colors as the cruise ship slowly passed this magnificent flow. It's beautiful blue ice coming into our view. We were struck by its color, size, and contrasting shapes. The glacier has varied and twisted forms caused by the forces of nature. It looked like a magnificent work of natural art put on display for the amazement of man. It's a rare day that the mountains of the Fairweather Range are seen, with a clear view of Mount Fairweather. We see the Margerie Glacier's flow to the Tar Inlet from these distant mountains. We got close-up views of the sculptured ice and distant views of the mountain ranges whose snows feed the glacier. We're lucky that the weather cleared. illuminating the Margerie Glacier, bringing out its splendid colors, and the view of the Fairweather Mountains. We leave Margerie Glacier, picking up speed, leaving Tar Inlet towards our next destination, the John Hopkins Inlet and the John Hopkins Glacier. We approached the John Hopkins Inlet, passing the Lamplugh Glacier. There were steep, rocky mountains surrounding the fjord. It was hard to gauge the relative size until we spotted a boat in front of Jaw Point. It was dwarfed by the massive formation. We got our first view of the John Hopkins Glacier as the ship cleared Jaw Point. The ship would stay at the mouth of the inlet, some 5 miles from the terminus of this tidewater glacier, as the inlet was the breeding ground for harbor seals. The seals used the floating ice from the calving events as a refuge for raising their young. Disturbing the water would interfere with the breeding season and the new pups. At the water, it is 250 feet in height and a mile wide. Although many glaciers are either stable or receding, the John Hopkins Glacier has been advancing since 1924. Its flow rate is one of the fastest, advancing at a rate of 3,000 feet per year, or around 8 feet per day. The John Hopkins Glacier was named after the venerable John Hopkins University back in 1893 by H.F. Reed. The university had sponsored Reed's expedition. The glacier starts on the east slopes of Mount Lituya, Mount Wilbur, and Mount Salisbury. We could trace the glacier from its source high in these mountains as it flowed 12 miles to the head of the John Hopkins Inlet. The day had turned magnificent, with bright sunshine and rich blue skies. There were still a few clouds hanging on the sides of the mountains, adding to their beauty and majesty. We cruised slowly across the mouth of the John Hopkins Inlet towards the Topeka Glacier, high in the mountains of the shore opposite Jaw Point. Unlike the others, the Topeka Glacier is an alpine glacier. As we approached the far shore, we had some good views of this glacier and its debris field. This glacier and the snow-covered mountains surrounding it was an inspiring view. The ship had turned around, heading back towards the Tar Inlet. We were once again treated to the magnificent view down the John Hopkins Inlet with its majestic mountains, their snow-covered peaks shining in the bright afternoon sunshine. We passed Jaw Point again, with the view of the glacier sliding behind it. We were on our way to our next tidewater glacier. The afternoon had developed into clear blue skies and bright sunshine. We had been on deck since the early morning, unable to take a break from the awesome spectacle of Glacier Bay National Park. The Lamplugh Glacier is around 3/4 of a mile wide and approximately 150 feet high at the face. It is formed in the Brady Ice Field, which lies east of the Fairweather Range, and travels 16 miles to Glacier Bay. The ice flow rates are estimated at around 1,000 feet per year, or 3 feet per day. The nickname for it is Lamplugh the Blue, because it's one of the bluest glaciers in the park. Lamplugh Glacier is bluer because its ice has been subjected to higher pressures. The park ranger had been giving talks during the tour. Here she points out Mount Cooper, located on the western side of the glacier. It was named after the botanist who actively campaigned for this area to become a national monument.
And among them, the true visionary of the group was a man named William S. Cooper. And that peak is named after him.
As we cruise slowly by the glacier, we pan the face, observing its jagged features and deep blue color. The color varies from a light blue to a deep dark blue at the bottom where the ice is calved away, exposing its lower layers. The debris on the right side looks like a gravel road. This was caused by the movement of the ice pushing and dragging along the rough side of the mountain, while the other side is relatively smooth and straight. As we were enjoying the view, there was a sudden crack like thunder or a rifle shot, followed by a huge splash. A house-sized piece of the glacier calved off into the water. We captured the event with a series of still pictures. We had seen a calving event. From the sun-drenched deck, we continued to marvel at Lamplugh the Blue as the ship slowly cruised by. We got many panoramic views and close-up views of the glacial features. The ship picked up speed as we headed to Reed, our last tidewater glacier. Our last tidewater glacier of the day was Reed Glacier. We had passed it on the way into Glacier Bay, but the dim morning light gave a very poor view compared to the bright sunshine of the afternoon. Now we have the opportunity to put the size in context, with a boat in front of the massive ice wall. Our eyes scan the face of the glacier and its crevasses. It is very blue in the bright sunlight. This glacier was named for Harry Fielding Reid, an American geophysicist. This glacier is advancing and has a length of 2 miles. It moves at the rate of 8 feet per day. It has what looks like frozen waves induced by its rapid flow to the water. The ship moved quickly by Reed Glacier and its valley. We looked back to a blue Glacier Bay and the snow-capped Fairweather mountain range. Our visit to Glacier Bay National Park was over as we sailed towards Icy Strait. We passed rugged, snow-covered mountains with streams of snowmelt running down their flanks. We saw large glacial valleys, high jagged peaks, and slopes rich with dark green vegetation. We looked back at the Fairweather Mountains and the glassy blue water of Glacier Bay, disturbed only by our wake. We see a small boat and seals sunning on a rock. Our ranger guides depart the ship and sail away on the Sarek. We say goodbye to Glacier Bay.